This program aims to find solutions to your medical queries. It seeks answers to common health problems that have been hounding you. We will help you out in finding answers to your medical concerns. In this week's episode, we learn more about the more common psychological disorder, depression. I'm Angel Jacob and this is MedTalk, your weekly on-air health consultation here on the Solar News Channel. Psychological disorder is a condition of the mind involving thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that cause either self or others significant distress. According to the 2011 record of the World Health Organization or the WHO, the Philippines has the highest incidence of depression in Southeast Asia with 93 suicides for every 100,000 Filipinos. Depression encompasses all genders, mostly between the ages of 20 to 50. 1 out of 5 people can experience some episode of depression. There are 2 classifications of psychological disorder. First is neurosis. Neurosis is characterized by anxiety, often as a result of inner conflict. The outward signs of anxiety may be hidden. However, as the person uses ego defenses to keep the anxiety under control, a person remains in good contact with reality. The second is psychosis. Psychosis is characterized by a loss of contact with reality. The person may be delusional, have irrational beliefs that conflict with common sense, or suffer hallucinations. What are the available medications for psychological disorders such as depression? Is there a cure? And how can we detect if a person is already experiencing depression? People with psychological disorders are often misunderstood. They're often judged without really understanding what they're going through. Joining us is Dr. Paul V. Lee, President of the Philippine College of Psychopharmacology and Associate Professor from the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Medicine in the University of the Philippines. Dr. Rainier Umali, Senior Consultant from the Clinic of the Holy Spirit and a lecturer from the Forensic Psychiatry at the Public Safety College. And our last guest, Dr. Mariano B. Gagi, Assistant Medical Director from the Clinic of the Holy Spirit in Quezon City. You can participate in the discussion by calling our hotline at 548-4678 or following us on Twitter at Solar TV News, #MedTalk. You can also email us at medtalk@solartv.ph. Dr. Gagi, let's start with you.
Yes.
What is the most or the more common psychological disorder here in the Philippines?
Well, we will consider it na yung depression. No? Alam mo na dito sa atin sa Philippines, yung kalungkutan, yung mga araw-araw nating problems, yung kahirapan, usual feuds, mga personal feuds, mga walang trabaho. These are the common types of depression talaga that we have right now.
Paano natin ma-identify kung itong one of the common types of depression, yung pinagdadaanan natin na hindi naman siya serious, or flip side, it is a serious case of depression already? Dr. Umali?
Well, in our case, no, paano mo malalaman ang question? Paano mo malalaman kung, or namin malalaman kung depression tao? We conduct tests and interviews. So we try to elicit from the patient symptoms of depression, whether mild, moderate, or severe. Pag nakuha namin yan, then we can come up with a more reliable diagnosis so we can give a more reliable treatment.
So, dapat ang patient talaga kusa, when they feel that it is out of the ordinary, yung pagka-depress nila, then they should seek psychological help.
Yeah.
Dr. Lee?
Yeah, that's true. We'll have to do, sometimes we call it an mental status examination. Where before, of course, before they go to a psychiatrist like us for that, there has to be an awareness that it's not a normal kind of sadness anymore. Instead, it's a depressive disorder, mainly because the person will have difficulty functioning in his occupation, if he's young, in school, or in terms of social functioning. Hindi na siya makapag-relate or gets to withdraw from, from society, from other people.
Pero bang hierarchy ang symptoms? Like first you experience this and then it progresses to this and then it becomes this?
Usually, ang unang naapektuhan yung what we call vegetative functioning, sleep and appetite.
Okay.
Diyan lang muna yung magsisimula.
So, with sleep, either sobrang tulog or the lack of sleep, and appetite, sobrang kain or the lack of it.
Extremes.
In your experience with patients, how does this go? How does one go about living their day-to-day life knowing that, they have these extremes?
Some would it would really depend on what we call some kind of a resistance of that person. Some people who may be weak will react suddenly, and within a day or two, you see them go into the extreme of symptoms of depression. Yung iba naman, they try to cope with it. So meron kami sinasabi, insidious, dahan-dahan yung manifestation of depression. And these are the people or the patients na hindi mo ma-pick up kaagad. Okay? But, a lot of times, that's why we have this 2-week grace period na kung nangyayari na yun sa'yo, then there's a need for consultation. Because, just like any disease, the earlier we pick them up, the better.
And like any other disease, sometimes it may be environmental. Is depression hereditary?
There's a basis for genetic component of what we call the major depression. In fact, we used to call this endogenous depression. So it may run in families. Okay? So if you have this depression and there's a history in your family, then I think you should be aware of it and be sensitive to this illness and seek treatment as soon.
How about triggering factors? We've mentioned the symptoms, we've mentioned it may be hereditary and it is influenced by the environment. How about factors that trigger this depression? Dr. Armani or Dr. Lagi?
Stressors like problems, ordinary problems that with loved ones, financial problems. These are triggering factors for depression.
And how do we, like we've always been saying, or you've mentioned that, to catch it early. To catch it early is key in sort of rehabilitating or curing the patient. But in layman's terms, how do you go about detecting it early?
In my case, I would say that we should not only concentrate on the patient, we should also educate people around that person who might be suffering from depression. They should be aware what is a depressive symptom. Because may dictum nga sa amin, the last person to know that he or she is depressed is the person himself or herself. Kaya importante yung support group, yung relatives, na alam din nila kung ano ang depression. And then magkakaroon ng social isolation. Hindi na nakikipag-usap, dati nakikipag-usap. And, ewan ko kung I can say this sa TV, sexual appetite, nawawala.
There's a dip in sexual
appetite. Little by little, nawawala. Iyan. Kaya minsan nagiging cause yan ng away between husband and wife. Dahil minsan hindi naintindihan ng husband. Nadidepress yung asawa mo, kaya wala. Normal yan sa depression. And lastly is suicide or suicidal thoughts.
That's an extreme.
That's the extreme.
When we come back, we will be joined by Cel Sabino, who was diagnosed with a bipolar type 1 condition. You can participate in the discussion by calling our hotline or following us on Twitter or by emailing us. MedTalk will be right back. This is Cel Sabino's story. In 2009, he noticed that he couldn't focus. His ideas were often overflowing that he had to write them all up in notepads just to contain his thoughts. Noticing the difference in his behavior, he went to a psychiatrist to have his condition diagnosed. Doctors then told him he had schizophrenia. And just a year after, he was then diagnosed with type 1 bipolar condition. But instead of looking at his condition negatively, he decided to channel his disorder to more productive endeavors. One of them is forming a triathlon team to hone his skills as an athlete. Today, knowing his type 1 bipolar condition, Sel channels his energies in tutoring students with difficulties in math and science. For him, no disorder can put a man down who is determined to live life to the fullest.
We're back here on MedTalk. Still joining us are our veteran psychiatrists who can answer all your questions on the psychological disorder, depression. And joining us also is Sel. Hi, Sel.
Hi.
Hi, you were diagnosed with a type 1 bipolar condition.
Yeah, correct.
Was this the first diagnosis?
Not really. In my case, I was first diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I was given risperidone, aspidol for about a year, and then it was not working for me. It was not
The medicines weren't working
comfortable
for you.
with the medication.
Okay.
And then I stopped taking it without my doctor knowing. And then afterwards, when my mom went back to the doctor after a while, then we found out na I was bipolar nga po.
Okay.
And then afterwards, he gave me the bipolar meds, Abilify.
Okay. Bakit naunang na-diagnose na schizophrenic siya or that he had schizophrenia, doctors?
Yeah. What were you, I may ask,
Of course,
Sel,
doctor.
what were your symptoms initially why you were diagnosed as schizophrenia?
Hallucinations po primarily talaga.
Okay.
I was hearing voices, and then
Yes.
the way people acting were weird for me.
Yes.
And then everything else was not normal. My perception of reality was totally different from what other people would see already.
Okay.
Gano'ng katagal yung symptoms mo bago ka na-diagnose?
Ano po, actually, Doc, it was fluctuating. Sometimes people are okay, and then times people are acting differently from what I perceived.
Like for example, how does that go? Like how are people reacting differently from what you perceive?
Sometimes it's like the whole thing is a puzzle for me.
Okay.
Like when I'm hallucinating, you're probably one of the characters that I'm familiar with, especially in the movie.
That's true.
Like for example, my
Parang
favorite
characters
movie,
yung mga person sa'yo.
Exactly, Doc. They're characters, and then they play a certain role on my not in the whole scale, but in my reality only.
Okay.
So, bali meron ka rin delusions.
Yung ano po, yung meron
You
nabasa
create
ko-
worlds
Yeah,
in your
exactly.
mind.
In my mind, it's something different already.
Is it exciting? Is it scary? Is it fun?
Actually, for me, it's fun.
In a way, let's call it misdiagnosed because the first manifestation
This is
was
schizophrenia.
a psychotic symptom, like hallucination and
Delusion.
or we
More
call
of
it
it.
false belief. Okay? And it can be diagnosed as schizophrenia, but when patients would manifest this, and after a while it will gel into the manifestations or symptoms of a mood disorder, then the diagnosis of bipolar disorder was given.
When did you start feeling unstable?
Actually, I feel Doc, from my experience, I think it's stress related, because when I started working with my old school, my school before, I taught there for a year, and then it was kind of stressful, the workload, and then I wasn't able to sleep anymore, and then that's when I started hallucinating, and then putting people into a certain character.
Parang na-overwhelm ka ba doon sa first job, no? Parang
Yeah.
ganun feeling mo.
My usual excuse is I was so young when I started working. I was 20, and then it's not an excuse usually, but then it was so much. It was so much for me, and then I transferred to another job, and then all of a sudden things are so much again. It was getting really weird na.
Pero, so before you had the hallucination, did you go into depression?
Not
Before
really
that,
po.
no? Agad-agad hallucination.
Hallucination. Kasi po, I wasn't able to sleep anymore, and then the voices started coming in.
Okay.
How did your family react to this? Sino una mong sinabihan that you were feeling this way already?
My mom.
Close ka sa mama?
Mama's boy. Hi, mom.
Sel, itong mga voices na narinig mo, excuse me, minsan parang nakokontrol nila mind mo.
Opo, parang merong conflict sometimes. You know, you're hearing voices already, but you want to get back to reality. You know that there's a fight that's happening na. Oh my God. It's
Meron time na
happening
parang
again.
sumasanib sila sa katawan mo.
Yung favorite ko po yung sabi ko earlier, yung si Jason Bourne. I feel like I'm a super agent thing. It's crazy.
Sinong Jason Bourne sa ultimate?
Sinong character?
Sinong
Yung ano po,
Parang
Yung
Jason
Batman.
Bourne.
Ikaw yung character na agent,
Ako
tapos
yung agent.
everybody
else
was an enemy.
enemy. Exactly.
Okay. Meron bang, is it all in your mind or is there a physical manifestation to this? Meron
Sometimes, conversations run through my mind lang eh.
Mabilis ba yung ang isip mo nun? Parang mas mabilis yung isip mo kaysa sa salita.
Ay, opo, totoo. Yes, look. Usually, it's overwhelming already. What runs through your mind, you can't express it anymore. When I write, sometimes I write, it's cluttered. Like
Meron time na
spies.
parang
Like
ang dami mong
spies.
ideas na naiisip.
Yun po, ganun talaga. Usually, the overwhelming
Ideas.
ideas.
How do you cope now? How
I
has it
swim.
been since you swim?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that good therapy to swim?
Of course.
The silence, the silence of the water.
Sarap, no?
sweet.
Oh, it calm.
That's my most favorite part of the day, the swim part.
Swim part. How often do you swim?
Daily, 7 times a week.
Is that also a diversion or is that part of therapy?
Well, it could be part of the therapy, but you know, with this condition, I think he was in a manic phase of his illness. So it's all the energy to do it.
Expand.
Start na mag-manifest yung
Yeah.
manic ka na yun.
But it's good in the sense that, you know, swimming is good for his health
Yes,
and body.
yes.
So
And
it's a good
speaking of-
deviation.
What is also good is that you are sharing with all of us your story because normally other people would be very shy, ashamed to tell the viewers,
Yan
to
ang
tell all
tinatawag
of us.
namin good insight. Na you have insight na you have something, you feel something wrong, and you want to get well.
Yeah.
Yes. We have a caller on the line, Luigi Acosta. Hi, Luigi.
Hi, Miss Angel.
Hi.
Hi. I'd like to ask po, is it possible to acquire a specific psychological disorder or namamana po ba yun?
Maraming sakit sa yung ginagamot namin in psychiatry na hereditary. Okay? Itong depression, merong hereditary component. It's genetic. Pati yung schizophrenia or even bipolar disorder. Yung sa bipolar disorder, it's not only bipolar disorder, meron ding kapamilya na depression. Kasi they're under a group of disorders we call mood disorders. So, namamani yun. Even yung sakit na tawagin namin nervous or anxiety disorder has also a genetic basis. And it's important to avoid alcohol really. Not only because you're on medication, but there's a relationship between tendency for alcoholism and mood disorders.
Thanks, Doc.
Well, that's why the show is MedTalk. It's on-air consultation. It's consultation with, our patients who are brave enough and who are happy enough to share with us their story. Thank you very much, Sel. And good luck with that triathlon.
Yeah, thanks.
In March. Huwag na mag-alcohol.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again, Sel, for sharing with us your experience. You can participate in the discussion by calling our hotline or by following us on Twitter or by sending us an email. Up next, we will be giving you tips on how to deal with the psychological disorder, depression. MedTalk will be right back only here on the Solar News Channel.
People with psychological disorders are often misdiagnosed. Knowing the proper ways to detect these disorders is a big help in understanding the condition. According to Dr. Randy Delosa, there are many ways to determine if a person is suffering from a psychological disorder.
The first basis to diagnose person, kung may bipolar siya or not, is really the behaviors. And we can do an interview. Now, to strengthen yung diagnosis, sometimes clinicians will resort to psychological tests. We have rating scales. We have projective tests like draw a person test or handwriting analysis. Usually, they will have big handwriting. And not ordinary big, but big. Really big. Because when they're manic, then they can have handwriting like this. You know? And then, because they're happy, they can put other things in, or they're hyperactive. However, if a person is depressed, usually the person will write at the lower end or will end downwards. And the person may write at the lower corner and the writing is smaller.
According to Dr. De Losa, it is more accurate to base medical analysis from the behavior of a person, and conducting tests strengthen it. However, numerous therapies can be done to patients diagnosed with a psychological disorder.
This is what we call music or sound therapy. And this is not just about playing music. This is about expressing yung inner emotions through the music or through the sounds. So in that way, nagiging outlet yung instrument. Yeah, we also use Filipino instruments kasi we also want to let our patients appreciate yung Filipino culture. So we have this instrument here. Another way is, of course, through art. Ito naman hindi siya art lessons. These are activities wherein in-express ulit yung emotions nila. And then, ipapa-interpret namin sila. It's very easy for people, no, yung ordinary people or yung laymen, to judge people with bipolar disordered, the bipolar disorder. Pero I think they have to be educated because people with bipolar disorder are, just like you and me. And once they're treated, they can be very successful and they can be very good people and friends.
You are still tuned in to MedTalk. Doctors, what is the youngest age diagnosed with depression? Dr.
Well,
Danny.
let's not be specific, but we'll give you examples like adolescents from bullying, hazing. These kind of cases are so young that we can consider depression or these people having depression themselves.
Bali, sa experience ko noon, ang isang na-encounter ko the earliest, no, is around 6-7 years old, who is already suffering from anaclitic depression. Yun yung depression in the young.
Okay,
Paano pag child and adolescent, we don't diagnose them kagad as depression.
Okay.
It is anaclitic depression para ma-segregate. Ibang handling yan eh.
Up to what age is anaclitic depression?
Hanggang teenage.
Teenage, so 17, 18?
Yeah. Related to that, it can even be younger, like preschool.
Yeah, please.
But the fact remains that the manifestations, yung symptoms of depression is not like how adults express depression, that they express it through psychosomatic symptoms. Yung bang, they somaticize, so they have pains here and there, masakit ang tiyan, masakit ang ulo, or, their children who will not eat.
Okay. Or not wanting to go to school, maybe.
So this has something to do with how they're treated by their caretakers, their parents. So even separation anxiety problems would manifest as, depression eventually.
How do we treat this? Since we're talking about the young, so let's start with them. How do we treat this? How do we educate those around them that it has to be treated, it has to be addressed?
One thing that is important is you should determine ano nagiging source ng depression ng bata. Number 2 is you have to give full support, assurance that he is not the one to be blamed. Yun ang tendency ng bata. Pag may problema, baka ako may kasalanan, ako pagalitan ng parents ko, ng magulang ko. You have to assure them. Kaya yung mga, tinan mo yung mga cases ng nabully, tapos nagsisuicide, reviewin mo yung family history, halos walang support. They have nobody to turn to. walang tutulong.
Or hindi nila ma-express kung paano ang tamang...
Takot sila.
Tama pa sabi ko sa mami ko to kasi ng daddy ko kasi baka lalo akong bugbugin ni daddy. Hindi ako lalaki. Sometimes these things happen.
So poor support system,
Yes.
and hostility coming from the environment. So kung sobra yung yung hostile, environment or aggression going on. So yung sinasabi niyo bullying, etc.
We have to answer our tweets from our followers. From Hershey Fernandez, how would you describe someone who is classified as having an antisocial personality disorder? Dr. Lee?
Okay, this is a person who breaks rules. Okay, we used to call them the sociopath.
Okay.
And they're the ones involved in breaking the rules, in eventually criminal activities. And these are people who are not easy to get into treatment because the biggest problem with this is they don't have any guilt. Okay? So they do, they break rules, they show aggression, hurt people, and they don't care. So it's only when they are caught, okay, and forced to go to treatment that they go for treatment.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gagi, Dr. Umali, Dr. Lee. That's a wrap. See you again next Tuesday on MedTalk, 10 p.m. on your scheduled on-air consultation here on the Solar News Channel. This has been Angel Jacob.